Hello there, I'm Wayne Martindale. Welcome to my home. Let's talk Canadian game shows, shall we? Second Honeymoon was an idea that my wife had, and of course it was based on the idea of how much do kids know about their parents. Well, I first hosted a game show in Canada for Merrill Heater, and he did a show in Vancouver titled The Last Word. That was my introduction to Vancouver, and I loved it. But we just loved the nightlife, the downtown. We just loved it there.
When you have a situation where the American dollar is worth $1.30 Canadian, that's the incentive.
Even though you had to fly to Vancouver and go through customs and do all of that, from an economy standpoint, a financial standpoint, Vancouver made more sense.
I had a chance to work with guys like Wayne Martindale. When Wayne says, "You want to come to Vancouver to do it? We're shooting it at BCTV." I went, "Yeah, sure, let's go." Anything at all, right? So we got a chance to get out there, and he presented this show called Second Honeymoon. And when I first saw it, it was like, this is big. This is very entertaining. I'd never worked with this host before. His name was Wayne Cox. He seems like a really nice guy, and I wanted to get to know him.
A fine Canadian gentleman who I think was a weatherman up there. That's the way we found him. We auditioned various possible hosts. He got the gig, so to speak.
Second Honeymoon was the first game show I ever did.
And he was so good. He was such a good interviewer.
But we really didn't have a format laid down. It was the first time this show had ever been done.
The whole premise was based on the same kind of question-answer as the Newlywed Game. You would match questions answered.
But it was far from being Newlywed Game. There were 3 sets of parents and their siblings. It was just the perfect marriage of kids and their parents.
The idea was the kids were trying to win a honeymoon for mom and dad. So the greed factor was gone. This was just a really nice thing for these kids to do.
And the siblings could win a second honeymoon for their parents to far-flung places in the world. We gave away some fantastic trips.
Compliments of Second Honeymoon! Congratulations!
In a lot of cases, some of those parents never had a first honeymoon. And these honeymoons were terrific. They were trips to Hong Kong, to Sydney, Australia, to San Francisco, all over the world. And the parents were just over the moon about it all.
He's our today's Second Honeymoon winner!
It was just one of those games that caught on for obvious reasons. It was one of those shows that other families watching on television could relate to it. It was clean.
We had to be very careful of what questions were asked because it was the Christian Broadcast Network. And they were always on our case about our questions. For instance, asking the kids, "Do you think mom would wear a saran-wrap bathing suit to the beach?" No. Not only did that question get thrown out, but I think the writer got thrown out too. This was just too much for the Christian Broadcast Network.
One of Mom's friends sent her a stripogram that was being performed by a well-built young man. As he was taking off his clothes, what would your mother do?
The show was set up with 3 exteriors of 3 houses, and they were on massive turntables. Never worked with that. This set was built the way they build sets in Vegas.
It was a very difficult show to do.
And so I had to find a way to bury a camera on set so I could shoot the host and back them up with the audience. But then I didn't want to see that camera for the rest of the show. I would go down to Stanley Park and sit on a log and take a stick and I'd draw out the set in the sand and try to make everything work and where my camera's angles would be, and it was always a top view. And I would sit there, and then finally it came to me, I'll have an extra camera and I'll bury them, and then we just won't use it when we're finished that part of the show. When you're doing the amount of shows that we were doing at the time, producers in Los Angeles take note of that. Everything up here seemed to work.
You go into a foreign country, you aren't always able to trust what the crews are doing. We had fabulous crews, and he found that out very quickly.
The talent there was exquisite, just really, really good. So it was always a pleasure. Everybody did their job. It was just fun to do shows there.
I look back on Second Honeymoon, it taught me to ask a lot of questions, especially with kids. Kids will come up with great lines. All you have to do is ask them.
It was just a perfect show. It's still seen in some areas of the country to this day. It won't go away because it too, I think, is a classic.